This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West Podcast with your host, Brandon Cook and Nick Harrington.
And welcome to the Hockeytown West Podcast, your source for everything Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye hockey. I am one of your hosts, Brandon.
And I'm Nick.
And we are thrilled to be joined for the first time going into this season by Tyler Kuehl, our buddy. He joined us a few times last season. Got him back already here because this is really the first episode to kick off our normal scheduling of 2 episodes per week and to get the regular season content underway. So Tyler, welcome back to the show, man. How are you?
It's weird to think that August means that we're near the regular season. I'm just getting into the football thing now. And now it's like, oh, hockey's coming too. And I'm like, I'm not ready for both at the same time, but here we are. We're going to get going right away.
Yeah, we don't waste any time here. You got training camp coming up here in Traverse City soon. Hopefully some other news out of the Red Wings organization before then. And who knows what else.
What could be newsworthy before training camp, Brandon? What?
You know, where does Lucas Raymond, or sorry, not where does, but when does his contract get signed? When does Sider's contract get signed? Where does Berge end up? Who are the goalies for each team? I don't know. But anyways, with
MBN,
that's gonna be the best red and white game ever. This the amount of goaltenders that are gonna be in that's gonna be fun to watch in itself.
I know, I'm excited. We will be there.
Ooh,
yes, it's gonna be a good time. But before we jump in, Tyler, just to remind all the listeners and viewers, who are you? Why would we have you on the show? What hockey knowledge do you bring to the table, and what do you do?
Well, my name is Tyler Kuehl. I am 29 years old. I am married, and I have a son in the room behind me. If anyone didn't get that, that was a Matt Foley joke, and I couldn't obviously say the van down by the river joke because I don't have a van, nor is there a river by me. I mean, there's the Grand River, but not that close. No, anyways, I cover the Griffins for mlive.com, and I also write for Daily Faceoff, College Hockey News, and I think that's it right now. Maybe more coming up. I'm not sure. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's all on my byline right now.
That's all you're allowed to tell us.
Yes, that's all I'm allowed to tell you without killing you. But unfortunately, since we're on a podcast, if I tell you, that means they hear it or they see it, and then I might get in trouble, and that's not good.
Yeah, let's avoid any trouble, please. We don't like scandals in this podcast.
100%.
Dealt with enough.
I have more questions off air for that one. But anyways, this episode today, we're going to be diving into kind of everyone that the Grand Rapids Griffins have acquired this offseason. We didn't do any crazy trade recaps, free agency signing videos. We talked a little bit about what happened with the draft, and some of the free agent talk was there, but it's time to really kind of dive in and see who we've acquired and who have we lost. I mean, we've lost a few guys too who've been a staple of this team for a while, or at least, high profile parts of the team for the past couple of years. So it's time to kind of give everyone a recap here so we can start getting into future episodes, maybe some roster predictions and more other fun stuff, but it helps if people knows who we're talking about. So we're going to dive right into it here and talk about the first acquisition. Well, not necessarily the first, but the first one on our list, Sheldon Dries. This is one that I think everyone in the Griffins fan base should be extremely, extremely excited about. It's a high-profile player who can put up points on the board. He's a center or winger. He can kind of play both, but does a lot for this team and replaces some points that we've already lost. So, Tyler, what do we need to know about Sheldon Dries?
Well, first of all, he is a Michigander, so we lose one Michigander and a guy like Austin Czarnik, and who do we get back? We get another high-profile scoring American League guy that can also turn it into the pro level here in Sheldon Dries. And one thing I like about Sheldon, Western Michigan guy. You know what? You can't go wrong with being a former Bronco. Now, unfortunately, his tenure with Western Michigan was not as fruitful as today's Broncos, but that's a story for a different time. The last couple years, he's been kind of going back and forth between the Vancouver Canucks and the Abbotsford Canucks. He actually spent the entire last season in the American Hockey League. But during the 22-23 year, during the very tumultuous season with Bruce Boudreau and Rick Tocchet and Jim Rutherford in Vancouver, all that nonsense, he actually played a good chunk of games too, put up 17 points and in 63 games, an 11-6 number there for you. So kind of a Cy Young caliber run for the Macomb kid. I like his game because one thing that I've noticed with him is that, yes, he can shoot the puck. He's got the scoring touch, but he can play with a little bit of grit. I saw his name pop up on hockeyfights.com a couple of times. He's got a little bit of an edge to him. And, that's what kind of is a guy that keeps him relevant. And for some players, and especially goal scorers, if you don't score goals, sometimes that's your bread and butter. And if you don't do that, you're kind of looked at as an afterthought and make it seem like you're not doing anything. So he finds ways to get involved in other ways too, playing the physical game a little bit. It's not like I keep calling him a kid. I mean, the guy is 30 years old, so he's just a few months older than I. So he's got the experience of playing the pro game. He's got the experience of playing the National Hockey League. He's going to be a great fit in here, with Grand Rapids. But with that, similar to Zarnik, he's a guy that you can push up to Detroit, a guy that can make an impact in the NHL and play some hefty minutes up there if called upon. He's having done it in the past. So I really like this move and this acquisition by the team, and just to kind of get him on board in Detroit and just have him be a nice veteran presence for the younger guys in Grand Rapids, the new faces we're going to see this season, but also be a guy that can contribute and be a player that's going to help this team win. Because I know we've kind of discussed this off air during during the off season here, but as nice as it was that, we had a good run with the group that we had last year going to the second round, and really could have gone to the conference finals and maybe put a fight up with Coachella Valley. I'm not saying that the Griffins would have. That's obviously we'll never know. But it's nice to just stay competitive and stay a team that should be in the playoffs, because that's what the Red Wings management does. And bringing a guy like Sheldon Dries in that can contribute and be a top scoring threat with this young, fresh group of offensive weapons that they're going to bring in, it's a good pickup.
Yeah, I agree. Nick, what do you think about Dries?
So I'm super excited about this guy. The one thing that in my notes that I was researching him is he's 3-year captain at Western. And you know how Steve and Waddy likes to bring in the veterans and that are captains. So that was a huge hit for me. I literally did put on there as Sarnik replacement in parentheses. So I like Tyler comes up and says, kind of Sarnik wise of one, he's from Michigan. We love that. But also like he can play in the NHL. If it's a first call up and we need him up there, he can go right up to the Red Wings. The other thing that I had for him too was one, it's a 2-year contract and it's a 2-way contract. So he can go back and forth, but 2 years. So, I mean, there's plans for him to be here longer than just this year. So I like that aspect on it. And he's a checking role. He plays center, defensive forward of the year for a senior year, which is, I mean, you'd love to see that too. Like, we're bringing veteran leadership. We've got captain leadership there. We're bringing in a 2-way forward here, and he's had success in the AHL. So, I mean, I love this pickup for us.
Yeah, easily one of the guys I'm most excited about to see added to this team this season. 52 points in 55 games last year with Abbotsford is pretty impressive. And to bring that kind of firepower back to the team, but also, like you guys said, some grit and the leadership, I think that's going to be huge. And, it's a Zarnik replacement, exactly. Like you guys hit it. Almost in size, too. He is 5'9". Like Zarnik was a smaller guy, too, as well. So it's just really funny kind of how this works out. But super excited to have him on the team, and I kind of really can't wait to see who he's paired with this year. I think that's something we'll be talking about quite a bit as we get closer to the season here. Now, we're going to move on to the next guy, because it's a guy we're unsure if he's going to end up in Grand Rapids or Detroit. He is on a Detroit contract right now, and it's William Lagesson. And that's an interesting one to all of us. I know Nick and I have debated, where is this guy going to end up at some point in time? But Tyler, what do we need to know about Lagesson?
Well, from firsthand experience, we saw him for an entire season in Chicago. That was in 22-23, the year we played him 10 freaking times. So we saw a lot of William Lagesson that year. And I got a good chance to see him in Toronto quite a bit. Played most of the last season with the Leafs before getting sent to the Anaheim Ducks. And I see his game, and he's not the most overly physical guy. I mean, he's 6'2", he's 200 pounds. So yeah, he's got a little bit of stockiness to him, but he's not doesn't play like a massive guy. They've tried to bring him out of his shell a little bit at some points, but he's just a calming presence back there. He's shown when he's in the American League, he can be a guy that puts up points. He is someone that I think just by the way things ended, because Toronto did want to keep him around. They wanted to see if he could become a guy that can stay in their six, maybe necessarily their top four, maybe a 5-6 defenseman. And he kind of hung around being the seventh guy. So they really realized they didn't have much of a use for him going forward. And that's why they had no problem giving him to Anaheim and then just kind of leaving him when the free agency period came around. I think he's going to be in a similar situation here with Detroit. He can easily, with the group that's there, I think he can make the top 6, but he's going to have to compete for minutes with a guy like Simon Edvinsson, who's there's no reason we should be talking about Simon Edvinsson on this program as a Griffin this year. I told him when I interviewed him at the end of the season, like, I hope I never talk to you again as a Griffin, because you should not be here. And he didn't say it out loud, but you can tell he realizes that's kind of the situation he's into. Lagesson's going to have to compete with that too. And I'm not sure how it's going to work, where he would fit in with Grand Rapids. Obviously, he doesn't want to go to the American Hockey League. The only reason why he signed an AHL contract with Chicago was he wanted a chance to better himself after a really tumultuous end to his time with the Edmonton Oilers. He really couldn't find a good rhythm there. It was when Edmonton was kind of starting to get good, but he just couldn't find a spot in the lineup. And he had visa green card issues trying to go from being in a Canadian team to in Bakersfield, an American team. And it was a whole rigmarole. He did an interview on the Agent Provocateur show with his client, or with his agent, noted Alan Walsh client, William Lagesson. And it was a really weird time for him. So that's why he came to Chicago and played with the Wolves and had a little bit of a good start with the Leafs, just couldn't keep it going. So I think if he gets good early on, gets a good training camp in, I think we're going to see him in Detroit, and I wouldn't be shocked if he plays there the entire year. But if he slouches, yeah, there's a good chance he might end up in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I think he's going to stay there, but like you said, if he slouches a little, he's going to end up in GR. What's your take on Lagesson, Nick?
Well, I want to ask Tyler, who would you compare him to that we've seen here through Grand Rapids recently or in Detroit? Play style.
I don't know. The problem is he doesn't make the same mistakes, but he's kind of got Mark Stahl to him, because he's a big, tall left-hand shot, but he doesn't play. And let's say Mark Stahl is the same thing. Mark Stahl doesn't play his size. He could play bigger. He could play more physical, but that's just not his game. And I think Lagesson wants to show that he can be a more offensive presence. But unfortunately, with the teams he's played with in the National Hockey League, he's never had that kind of opportunity to play those minutes to be an offensive weapon. And, the 1 year he played in Chicago, the full season, he puts up 32 points. He can be an offensive guy. He just needs to get the right opportunity. And I think with the role he would get in Detroit, he wouldn't get that. But I think he's in a situation where if I can't play in the NHL for this team, find me somewhere where I can play in the NHL. And I think that's why also he looked at Detroit and said, you know what, this could be an opportunity. And with those free agent conversations, there is that. It's not like, Yzerman was like, well, William, you got to try your hardest. We might give you a look. I'm sure even as tough as nails Yzerman can be, I'm pretty sure, Yzerman said, we think you can be in the NHL with us. Because I don't think Lagesson would have signed if he knew there was not a good opportunity to play in the NHL. And I know that kind of negates this part of our conversation, but, that's what I think his game lies. And I know I kind of went a little bit off track with the question there, but just big, tall, lanky guy. Because people think when I say that, they think Simon Edvinsson, and that's just two completely different players. That's not even a good comparable for recently. So, yeah, if you're looking for someone from Detroit, I would say Stahl, but just not as many egregious turnovers and mistakes in his own zone, I would say.
That's positive.
The notes that I had on him is that he's a strong defenseman. He puts up some points in his own zone. He plays physical, and he's strong positioning, defensive defenseman. So I'm thinking Josiah Didier is kind of the guy that I'm thinking of. He likes to play aggressive. He likes to play in his own zone. You don't think of Dids as more of an offensive guy. I mean, hopefully this season he worked on a shot and he got it. But
hey, listen, man, those 65-mile-an-hour muffins, 2 for 2 from the right point.
He was.
Yeah, I'm playing, but and that's kind of the guy that I kind of see the similarities too. I mean, he plays on the left, shoots left. It's a 1 year contract. It's a pretty much a what is an insurance policy, I would say, on this guy. Is like if he can't make the NHL and then he comes here, like he can rotate in and out or play on the top. Like just depends on what our prospects here, if they put in a good training camp or in summer camp.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how the defense unfolds, because that signing confused me when you sign the Albert Johansson deal where he's got to either prove himself or be put on waivers and all this other fun stuff. So it's going to be interesting to watch this one unfold. That's why we want to make sure he was on the list, because he could potentially end up here. We don't know, but he's just a very interesting one to watch. That's the best way to put it for us. But you talk about a guy who had a weird time in Edmonton and move on to the next guy who also had a weird time in Edmonton, newly acquired goaltender Jack Campbell. And I know, Tyler, you're going to have a ton to say about Jack Campbell here. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts and what we need to expect from Soupy this year.
I'm going to have a big feature with him because I've, from secondhand, just one, and you see it in the interviews, but off camera, I've heard he's just one of the nicest people ever. And it sucks of everything he went through. And from the people I've talked to, he worked really hard in Bakersfield. Like he had his moments of lack of confidence after getting sent down from Edmonton last year. But the problem is he goes to work and he tries, and it stinks to see a guy like that struggle, because he had this before. This is not the first time he's had this NHL potential and then has mucked it up in the minors. This happened when he first made the jump to pro hockey. Everyone remembers his heroic run during the 2010 World Juniors with Team USA. Is a Dallas Stars draft pick, their goalie of the future right after Marty Turco. And he just fizzled with Texas. He was terrible with the Texas Stars. Anyone who knows it, you can just look at the numbers, but if you watched him, he was horrendous. And he just got a good couple of chances with Los Angeles and looked good behind Jonathan Quick, came to Toronto and took the job away from Frederik Andersen and was looked at as the number one goaltender. And when even though, the playoff success wasn't there, he was good enough to get a $5 million AAV contract with the Edmonton Oilers. And I knew Campbell's a good goaltender, but I saw that and I'm like, that's a lot of money for a goaltender with flaws. Because remember, he was on that Toronto team that blew a 3-1 lead to Montreal in the first round during the 2021 playoffs. So all that considered, I think he understands his role with this organization is help out, be a good goaltender in the minors, help Kosa kind of prepare for life in the NHL, because we see who's up at the top. And unless there's some plans with Ville Husso and they think Ville Husso is going to be back to normal, back to 100%, obviously he's going to be part of the top three for sure. I was doing my season preview. One of my season previews for the Daily Faceoff is on the Detroit Red Wings. And I look at this and they have a plethora of good goaltending, of NHL ready goaltenders. And I know Kosa, you can maybe make the argument Kosa's there, maybe not. So maybe we'll say 4.5 NHL ready goaltenders with the Red Wings. That's not a bad problem to have, especially when you come closer to the trade deadline, because and if Campbell kind of figures out his game in the AHL, you can use that as leverage for some deals. But I'm just hoping he has a bounce back year, and hopefully maybe this fresh start with this new organization gives him some opportunities to really figure out his game, because when he plays well, I've seen it firsthand. He can really steal a game for you. I know his style isn't what the modern age of goaltender is. It's kind of old school a little bit in a way, but it works for him when he is playing well and he's playing confident. When he was in Toronto, when he was leading them to best, near some of the best regular seasons in the franchise's history, when he was playing confident, when they were all chanting Soupy in Air Canada Center, Scotiabank Arena, he was fantastic. So if he can find his game back, if he finds his game here in Grand Rapids, I will tell you what, he will not be here in Grand Rapids for long, because someone's going to see that in the NHL. I'm like, hey, we need this guy on our team now. And they're going to be phoning Steve Yzerman about that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting with him to watch that unfold. And like you said, he did go work hard in Bakersfield. When he played 5 games for the Oilers last year, ended with a 4.5 goals against and a .873 save percentage. Went down to Bakersfield, played, not good at all. But then went down to Bakersfield, played 33 games, a 2.63 goals against and a .918 save percentage. Like, he did good work there on a not great team. Like, they're okay. So to see him go do that, it's reassuring. And like you said, he's been through a lot. And what better veteran can you pair with a young goaltender that could potentially go through a lot in his career than a guy who's seen it all?
Mm-hmm.
He's had highs, he's had lows. He's going to be able to help Seabass figure out life as his next step should be the NHL and hopefully the next couple of years. And like you said too, is Coast NHL ready? We don't know. We want to assume that, but at the same time, it doesn't put Detroit in a position where if one of the 5 goalies on their roster, I'm joking, there's not 5 up there, but if one of them gets hurt, they don't have to pressure Sebastian Costa into a game and have him let in 7 goals like Jesper Wallstedt. Like, we don't have to put him in that situation where he's got to come back and find his game again. So I'm excited for that move. The tandem in Grand Rapids could be lethal. Nick, what are your thoughts?
So I'm super excited for this pick, or for this signing. I shouldn't say pick. This signing, another Michigan guy, and which we love our Michigan players. I think it's going to be good for everybody overall with this. Like, Jack gets to come home. He gets to kind of reset, kind of get into a routine, get into a rhythm. He's going to have family support. He's going to have friend support too that are going to come out. So I think that's going to be big on his mental side. I love the aspect of just his story and like how much this could connect with Kosa being a high draft pick, maybe, kind of going through some struggles and some obstacles. Like, I don't think Kosa, like, we can't say Kosa is going to go through this stuff, but it helps to have somebody there to help. Now I'm hoping that it's these two, like we just saw with Michael Hutchinson last year. Kosa probably takes a little bit more of the starts this year, but I'm not going to be that nervous or freaking out when, we put Campbell in, compared to Hutch. Like, we felt better when Kosa was in overall, but I don't know if somebody wants to take him. I mean, I'm hoping we unload somebody else from the Red Wings instead of Campbell.
Well, as we saw last year, like Yzerman had an opportunity to make a move at the deadline. He could have moved Hutchinson, probably could have moved Lyon or Reimer, because Yzerman was still kind of on the fence about whether or not this team was going to make the playoffs, but he stuck with the guys he has. And Yzerman is the kind of guy that won't make a move that he doesn't think is going to be beneficial to the team making a run to the cup. So it's going to be seen where the team is come February and even late January to see whether or not one of these goaltenders might be on the move. Because if you can get a good player for a goaltender at a good price, I mean, and you think your team can make it to the playoffs and beyond, like, yeah, it's nice to know that you have goaltending that can, not to say disposable, but you can make a move because you have so many to give away in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we don't know what injuries are going to happen too. I mean, the Big Cat went down last year, like right in the preseason. And so like everybody was holding on to goalies like dear life. So that could come into play. The other thing too is I think this team's defense actually got worse this year from last year with the people that we promoted up.
Right.
Our forwards got better. So I mean, it's good to have good goaltending in the back. That's going to help elevate that.
Yeah, and another thing I've talked about with Nick off air too is we got to remember, like, if you look at elite prospects right now, the Griffins have 5 goaltenders, but the way the system works is they can be, these goalies can be loaned to other teams. They can still get play time. Like Gage Alexander, we don't know if he's going to end up in Toledo or whatever. He could get loaned to another team and be playing still and still become an asset to be moved at some point in time. So it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds this year. I know Griffins won't roll with 5 goalies. I mean, 2 of the goalies in that list are Jan Bednar and Carter Gylander. We assume they'll end up in Toledo. And it's gonna be goalie watch all season long. But I think the solid 2 in Grand Rapids, and barring any crazy injuries in Detroit all season long, will be Jack Campbell and Sebastian Costa for sure. But moving on to the next guy here, a defenseman that we acquired. I got Tori Dello, and this is an interesting one. Some veteran D presence for the Griffins here, adding another defenseman to a system that we feel like has a ton of defensemen already. But I don't know if he's going to get a ton of play time, what it's going to look like. But what do we need to know about this guy?
You know what's crazy? When I started looking him up, I totally forgot that he was with the Griffins in 2021 during that COVID shortened season. I totally forgot about that. He came right out of Notre Dame, was going to be maybe a guy that played a little bit, and because the Griffins are trying to push for the playoffs in 1920 before COVID came. and may have been a black ace for the playoffs, but I totally forgot he was around because that season for me was just a blur. Because I'm not going to lie, I really didn't pay attention to much of the Griffins that year because, one, the season really didn't matter, and there was not a whole lot of promotion and demotion because of the taxi squad and COVID and all that stuff. So it was really hard to get understanding of the Griffins and stuff. And so I see Torey Dell was with the Griffins that year, and I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, oh, well, it makes sense that I didn't remember that. So apologies to Dello, but something, I mean, he's kind of a, because he wasn't really a high prospect, but in a way, he's kind of got a little McIsaac to him. He's kind of around that size. He has the ability to score a little bit. You saw that in spurts with Chicago, with the Wolves and Laval over the last couple of seasons. But yeah, to your point, he's going to be a veteran guy. So you're going to have to worry about the vet rule a little bit with someone like him. So he's going to be a guy that you might be seen paired up with Didier, or, maybe Watson wants to keep Albert with Didier in that regard, but he's going to be a filler for this lineup. And, just another guy that's going to be brought in to say, hey, kind of help our prospects, our rookies, and kind of get them accustomed to the everyday life of a pro hockey player, because he's got that experience. I mean, he previously won. He's got some, doesn't like hasn't won anything in his life. He's got a bronze medal with the Holinka with the U.S. He is a 2-time Big Ten champion with Notre Dame. So he's got a winning pedigree before making it into the pro ranks and whatnot. So I think there's an opportunity for him to kind of play a little bit and get an opportunity to, maybe get a chance to play with some future NHLers. And he's done that in the past. And I think it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be difficult to see where he fits in the lineup, but you never know. He might be like a Steven Kampfer kind of guy and just step in here, put up a bunch of points, and boom, he's off to a different team because he's got a good run going.
It's true. That's true. Nick, what are your thoughts on Torey?
He's got a 1-year contract, but he's a 2-way player, so he can go back and forth. I think this is another just insurance policy. If somebody doesn't step up, we can insert him in. He brings leadership. He was a captain with his junior team in the USHL with the Tri-City Storm. So, I mean, that aspect will help. Another captain kind of guy material. But, I mean, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He's more of a defensive guy, so we're not looking for him to put up a bunch of points. I mean, you're not going to see that out of him. But it's definitely interesting that he is back with Grand Rapids. So I'm wondering what was the reasoning of bringing him back? Like why he wanted to come back.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, like you brought up the 2-way deal there. Maybe he just signed because he heard about the mileage, deal that Detroit pays out their players. And he saw what Raff got last year and he's like, hey, I can get that too. So that mileage pay must be pretty good. But no, it's just depth. It's just more good depth that who knows? Like you said, he can score in spurts here, and maybe he gets hot at the right time when we need him to. So who knows what this guy's going to be, but it'll continue to just be interesting to watch these defensive battles in the back end for this team. There's a lot of things that could happen, but I think that wraps up Torey there. Before we move on to the next guy, we got to send it over to the sponsors. So we'll do a quick ad break here, send it over to DraftKings and BetterHelp. And when we come back, we'll do the recap of the rest of the guys. So Nick, go read the ad.
Do you know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only like 2 days the whole year without a game. 2, with so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. Currently, the Detroit Red Wings are a plus 4,000 to win the Stanley Cup for next year. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Will Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. cdkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It just isn't for those who have experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN.
And welcome back. All right, let's dive into the next guy. We got Joe Snively. This is another one I'm really excited about, honestly. Left winger, played with the Hershey Bears last season and the season before, back-to-back Calder Cup champion, bringing a ton of experience along with really good scoring capability. So, Tyler, tell me what we need to know about Joe Snively.
Good old Ivy League legend Joe Snively. When I briefly covered the Capitals a couple of years ago, that was during his longest stretch with the team in the NHL. And, with his game, unfortunately, there's been little things that have not allowed him to be a full-time NHLer. Some say it's his size, because it's tough. Because he played on a Hershey Bears team with a guy by the name of Ethan Frank. For those that don't know, Ethan Frank led the NCAA in scoring while at Western Michigan his senior year back in 21-22. Ironically, the year I covered the Capitals. Long story short was there is a reason why Ethan Frank is not in the NHL. And people think, well, it's because him and Alexander Ovechkin shoot from the same spot. Yes, but also the fact that some people knock Frank's size. And I think people knock Snively's size because Snively's a really, really good playmaker. He finds teammates in high scoring areas. He makes room for himself with a little bit of quickness as well. I think this is going to be an interesting move because we talked about a guy like Sheldon Dries who can put the puck in the net. I don't think that Watson's going to put these two guys together, but if they ever were, they would really complement each other very well. Snively gets the puck, finds Dries finishes. Like that would be a really good line for both players playing to their strengths. Now, granted, I think Watson is going to want, Snively to play with a younger guy that they're trying to get some goals in, and then Dries is going to be a guy trying to help their playmaking ability. So there's going to be a little bit of that, maybe tinkering, but of course, like lines change all the time. Watson has no problem throwing in, like I call the old guy line. Sometimes, he did that last year with a guy like Dominic Shine, Tara Hirose, Tyler Spiza. He's thrown that line out so many times, for better or worse. But I like Snively's game. He's a good player. He's got confidence. He likes to use. It's a bummer to see him leave Washington in a way and come to the Red Wings organization because he was a Washington little cap. He came up, as a fan of the Capitals. So it probably was a little tough for him to leave the organization that he grew up cheering for, but he's going to get a really good opportunity with the Griffins, even though he is a veteran for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting with these guys, the smaller stature that we brought in here. I think they're all really capable of scoring goals and putting up points and making great plays. And, I think of a guy on the team currently like Amadeus Lombardi, a smaller guy who's trying to make his way up into the league. And you look at these two guys and be like, that's perfect mentors to teach him the way to play the game that they play and how to keep themselves available to make the plays they do. Like he's going to learn a lot from these guys through practice and everything else. So that's going to be interesting to watch unfold. But Nick, what do you think about Mr. Snively here?
I think you guys said everything I wanted to say.
Great. Moving on. I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. This was one of the top 10 signings that the Griffins did that I absolutely loved. I don't know if you caught that. But moving on. So I was super excited because I was watching Hershey throughout the Calder Cup finals the last 2 years, and his game just really stood out to me. He puts points on the board. He's going to be very exciting to watch. I was surprised that we got him. I think Mr. Todd Nelson was surprised that we got him as well, his old coach over at Hershey. Like I'll let Brandon tell that story, but I'm super excited that people that don't follow the AHL and only kind of like stick with the Griffins, I think this guy's going to surprise a lot of them, and he'll win them over pretty quick. So I'm very excited. It is a 1-year contract. I was surprised he left Hershey, but I'm hoping that we can get maybe another year or two out of him after the season ends. So I'm super pumped for this guy.
Yeah, I was surprised he left for the 1-year deal too. And like you said, I think certain other people were surprised too. But that's an exclusive post episode recording story that we'll share one of these days. But yeah, I'm excited to have him. I think it's just another good veteran there to replace some scoring. Like that's what it is, and he's going to be able to teach the younger guys a lot of stuff. So exciting stuff. And out of the next guy now, I am going to butcher this name unless Tyler knows how to pronounce it better than me.
I can take over from here. So I'm the kind of guy that actually, here's a funny little tidbit. If you ever want to look back at old Jaromir Jagr highlights from like his first year in the league and hear every broadcaster say his last name differently, like they kept calling him Jaeger or Jager. Some even call him Jagger, which was kind of funny because that was when Rolling Stones were still a big thing. I mean, I guess they still are. But anyways, so I heard that and I saw, I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to their language and hear how they say it. So I watched this guy's highlights, and I believe the way the broadcasters say it, because it is Czech, so it's a little bit faster, maybe a little bit hard to comprehend. Jakub Riklovsky. I just butchered it myself.
Say it again?
Yeah. Jakub Riklovsky.
It sounds right. I like it. Riklovsky.
Because it looks like Rychlovsky, but it's not. It's, I believe, in the Czech dialect, it's pronounced Riklovsky. Unfortunately, that is like the one name you would think that would pop up on Elite Prospects that you could click, even if you have like the free profile, you click the name and it'll like give it to you. It does not. So we're going with Riklovsky until Bob Kaiser tells us otherwise. This is a really interesting pickup by the Red Wings to find a guy like this, because he played in the Czech Extraliga, which is a good league. Let's not knock it, but if you're comparing it to the KHL, the Swedish Elite League, Liga in Finland, the National League in Switzerland, it's really hard to say it's one of the top. It's a top 5 league, but certainly not the best league in Europe. They always put teams there in the Champions Hockey League over there, and they make good runs. But, you know, he's played the last few years with Bill Thierry, and he's actually been one of the top players in Extraliga in Czechia. And I think that with his ability, I mean, he led the league in goals last year with 26. And I know people hear that and say 26 goals, that's not a lot. But I'm sorry, if you study European hockey enough, anything over 25 goals or 20 goals is actually pretty impressive. It's just a completely different game there for the most part. It's not like the NHL where, you know, you'll see a lot more 2-1, 3-2 kind of games in Europe. And it's not just because of the bigger ice too. It's just a completely different style of game. But even with that, he's found ways to be a very productive scorer. He's played for Czechia on the international stage quite a bit. He played a little bit for the senior team this past season, played on the Euro Hockey Tour with them. And for those that don't know, it's pretty much national team players kind of playing like showcase games against each other in the middle of the season, kind of like what, for those that follow soccer, European soccer, of how there's just international friendlies every so often in the middle of a season. Like Premier League takes a week off and they, you know, England goes and plays, or not Uruguay, but like they go play Albania or something, just some random, you know, country over there as a friendly. That's what Czechia and some other nations like to do, just kind of keep their international teams at a high. But he played at the World Juniors a couple of years ago. Really good scoring threat. It's going to be an adjustment for him. He's trying to take a shot at coming to North America, found an opportunity. And if he can kind of fit in and adjust that game for the North American ice that as he was in Europe, he'll be a good fit, you know, but obviously way down the depth chart in terms of the NHL. But, you know, year one, I'm really interested to see how he adjusts for sure.
Where would you put him?
Oh, golly. It's a good Dan Watson question, if you ever ask me. I would, at first glance, I mean, problem is, like, you don't want to put him in a third line checking role because he's not a third line checking guy. He's 5'10", he's 180 pounds. He's got some speed to his game. He's got a good shot, but when Watson's this kind of guy, he's going to want guys to earn their spots on the team. And, he'll be someone that's going to kind of get mixed in, especially with how bad the power play was last year. I don't think any spots on that 5 are secured at all for the first month of the year. So I think he'll get cycled in there, maybe get some looks, and maybe that might lead to some top 6 minutes. But yeah, it's tough. I think but then again, I thought a couple of years ago, Sebastian Coast was going to start the first game of the season and over Victor Bratcham, and then Yussi Okanora was the number 1 starter in night 1 of the year. So I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen?
Oh, there's a name.
Simon hockey, ladies and gentlemen.
There's a name. I was just we asked because there's an episode that'll come out next episode after this where we talk about where we would place him opening night, and I was curious to see if you matched up where we were at. But that's yeah.
I was not it. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Nope, you're good. But Nick, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you got here?
So with Mr. Ricklowski, I'm very excited about this guy. I like the offensive output. I mean, you do see some of these guys come over and they do struggle throughout. Like you saw that with you saw that with Pontus a little bit when he was over here. You saw it with Kuehl when he was over here as well. So I mean, that does give me a little bit of concern. But I mean, like Tyler said, the power play is atrocious last year. Okay, you didn't say that, but that's what you're meaning to say. People
when one of your power play goals is an empty net, one of your 5 in the playoffs.
I mean,
yeah,
it wasn't good.
We struggled with empty nets this last season too. So I'm excited about it. 2-year contract, $870,000. Let's see what he has. If he's here to prove it to us, I'm all aboard. Let's see. I mean, is he taking a spot from somebody else? Maybe like Cross Hannes? Possibly. I mean, like, I don't know. We'll see.
If you look at his stats in the past few years, it's the perfect time to take a gamble on him. Like the production increase he had last season, 46 points in those 51 games he played over there. Like that's the time to nab him. So is he going to come in and be able to stride on North American ice right away? Maybe, but it's unlikely. But at the same time, if they hit with this gamble, then it's another good depth piece or someone that could crack the bottom 6 in the NHL. He's young. He's 23 years old. Like Detroit might have found a diamond in the rough, or, it's something they move on from, but it's worth the gamble with where we're at in forwards. And I think he does add upside into the power play because basically anything would add upside to the power play at this point for this season. So I like the pickup and I'm excited to watch him play. And I'm excited to hear Bob and Larry try to pronounce his last name.
Oh, geez. That's going to be something. It's literally going to be said 10 different ways the first 5 games of the season. You know that for sure.
100%. 100%. Next guy we'll move on to, Gabriel Seeger. This is another young kid picked up out of Sweden here that could be a nice little gamble. So let's see what you think about this guy, Tyler.
He is, the nice part about him compared to talking about a guy like Ricklowski is that Seeger's got some experience here on North American ice. He's had a nice little long college career, played a lot in the Northeast, played for Union for a few years, transferred to Cornell as that program's trying to get back into being a really tough opponent and a top team in the country. I mean, he had a really, really good year for a Cornell team that kind of, he was, for all intents and purposes, on a good enough Cornell team that I'm going to start over because I can't remember how far Cornell made it all of a sudden in the hockey tournament. Give me 15 seconds. So I really apologize. You're prepared for this. You
left them in points, I know that, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember how far they went in the tournament. That's right, they lost in the regional final. Okay. So unlike what we kind of just discussed here with a guy like Ricklowski, Seeger's got some experience here on North American ice, and he was, he's played a lot there in the Northeast, played for Union College, then came to Cornell and really flourished. As I say, 4 years ago, had COVID not happened, Cornell's men's and women's teams would have been the first school to sweep the national championships. I think both teams were good that year, that good. And Seeger was on a really good Big Red team this season, and he was their top guy. And he really came out of his shell. He found ways to really balance his scoring attack. He got a little bit more help on the goal scoring side himself, but he's kind of like Snively coming in here. He's a really good playmaker. He had 44 points last year, helped Cornell win an ECAC championship, and unfortunately lost to the eventual national champions at the University of Denver. So, he really helped this team become a national power once again, which is tough to do in the Ivy Leagues. I think the ECAC, while it gets overlooked compared to a Hockey East or a Big Ten or an NCHC, it's a very tough conference to really get a good foothold in and be a strong team consistently. And that's what he was really contributed at. And I know some people think, well, Ivy League hockey is not the same as the NHL. And you know what? To some extent, that is true. We've seen some guys break that mold, but Seager, if he can adjust to playing with, college hockey, especially playing the American League, you're playing up against a lot of guys that are 23, 24 years old. And, him being a 5-year college guy, he's pretty much coming out as a man. He is a full grown man. He's 6'4", he's 200 some odd pounds. He's a big dude. If he can play physical and he can, I know we kind of poke fun of him in the past, but if he can find his legs and be strong on his skates and do that faster than Elmer Soderblom did, he's going to be a very effective player for the Griffins. And I think that's a guy that the Red Wings see and like, you know what, we're going to keep an eye on him. I don't think, similar to Rokhlowski, I don't think he's going to be like their next big prospect with Seager. But I think he's right on the cusp that if he gets a good run here and really impresses them this season, he's going to be on their radar in the near future.
I like that. Nick, what do you think?
I'm excited. I'm actually really excited about this guy. Going through his notes and his seasons. So I, like you said, Tyler, Ivy school, just like the other guy. And
means he's smart, kids.
He's smart. Went to Cornell. What other Ivy school out there is better than Cornell?
If you want to get people into a fight,
it's an office joke.
Oh,
I'm glad I picked up on it too.
Cookie, you can't talk. You're not a Harry Potter guy. Like, you wouldn't get Harry Potter jokes. So,
wow, way to sell me out on the show.
Yeah.
Anyways,
there's a Greyhound bus. Throw him under
it. This guy, he plays center. He plays left wing. So I like the versatility that he brings. He was also very, very good on the faceoffs. That was a major stat that I pulled when he was at Cornell, was that he was very good at the faceoffs. He was actually ranked 5th nationally in faceoffs. So like, either he can help teach our guys to take better faceoffs, or he could be there to help take the faceoffs, like one or the other. So that's the big thing that stood out to me, is this guy's a faceoff guy. His stats don't look that bad either for the games, like his offensive output. So I'm excited about him. I don't know. It's just a 1-year contract, I believe. Yeah, 1-year contract on this guy. So a flyer. It's interesting that I feel it's interesting that we're taking a lot of college guys now. But I don't know if that's been like the history here with this organization of like, we've got Hunter Johannes, we've got Gabriel Singer, we've got there was somebody else that we picked up from college too.
We'll get to him in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. Yeah. So that's the one part that I'm like kind of questioning, but you guys know it better than I do.
Well, they just want to have more smart kids on the. I don't know. It's one of those things where, with the Red Wings starting to get good again, they're not going to get the top prospects anymore. We're back to, I know we're not quite at the 25-year, we're always making the playoffs and we're always picking after pick 20. We're not there. The Red Wings aren't there yet, but you're not picking top 10 consistently unless you're acquiring draft picks from teams, which is it's unique to fans that may have only picked it up recently, or the younger fans. But for people like us, that was the norm. You don't have first round picks. I think maybe one out of it seemed like there was never a time that the Red Wings drafted consecutive years in the first round. I know that's not historically accurate, but that's just kind of how it felt because of how late they would draft every single year. So you kind of need to fill the team up with players, fill up your prospect pool with just guys that you think, hey, he did well in college, let's bring him in and see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, okay, we'll try someone else. That's why you sign these 1-year contracts.
Yeah, and the good thing for us too, when I look back at like just the organization as a whole, when Dan Watson was in Toledo, he was really good at recruiting college players to come play
Yeah.
for Toledo. Having him as an asset here when it comes to recruiting for Grand Rapids is a nice thing to have. And it seems like he's found a couple guys that could pan out to be some pretty darn good players, at least for the Griffins, and who knows what the ceiling actually is. So I'm excited for him. I think Seeger is going to be a fun one to watch. He's a big kid, or sorry, full grown man now. He's done with school, but he's a big dude, and I'd love to see him on a line with Elmer. Honestly, like we brought him up earlier. That's a couple big guys out there causing havoc, especially if he can find a physical game out there in the AHL.
What does Elmer know about being on a line with a bunch of other big guys? That's never happened in his professional career, right?
No, never. And if Elmer can play like he was near the end of last season, he's gonna have a good year too. So maybe they'll complement each other. Who knows?
You could put Gettinger on the other wing. There you go. You got your own.
Oh my!
Just have a bunch of big dudes, big guys being big dudes.
Yeah.
It might not be the fastest line out there, kids, but darn it, you ain't getting through them.
Well, speaking of a big guy who likes to play a physical game, we'll move on to the next guy here, another defenseman, and Chaz Redekop. Now, for those that have listened to the podcast this last season and all the Toledo talk, that name rings a bell because he played for the Kalamazoo Wings last year, and I heckled the crap out of him all season long. So
because his name was Chaz.
No, it was because so Chaz Redekop is a guy that if he's on your team, you love him. If you're playing against him, you think he's a big crybaby and he's too physical and he plays the type of game you don't like. But if he's on your team, you're like, I love that dude. He was Kalamazoo's captain as well, even though being the captain put up 194 penalty minutes with the Wings last year and 109 the season before with the South Carolina Stingrays in the ECHL.
That was Ben Smith, man. That's what he did all those years ago with the K-Wings, getting kicked out of games for cross-checking guys 5 or 6 times. Man, that was Coast is something else, man. It's a different league.
It's a very different league, but he knows how to play. He's definitely a guy that I think will start the season in Toledo. We'll just throw that out there right out the gate. He's going to be in Toledo, but he is a good call up if needed. But with the way he plays a game defensively, he's good. He's a +5 last year on a decent K-Wings team, put up 15 points in 67 games and just wreaked havoc. I mean, I saw him personally drop the gloves with Toledo's biggest guy last year in the playoffs. And he got his number. Like Jacob Graves is no small customer, and he took him on and he beat the crap out of him. But what do you know about Chaz Redekop, Tyler? What should we expect if we do see him called up to Grand Rapids?
I mean, certainly a spirited guy, and someone at his stage in his career, just kind of happy to be there in a way. I know that sounds kind of crappy to say about a professional athlete, but outside of a couple stints in the American League here and there, I mean, the last time we saw him in the AHL was with Belleville or Tucson back in 01 or 21, 22. So it's been a minute since he's been up this high, and you never know. Like, I mean, the Griffins were able to find ways to implement veterans into the games. It was different last year because with the playoff push, no one really wanted to change the lineup too much. We didn't, obviously, because it worked. Why would you break something if it's not broken? Don't fix it. But you never know. Injuries happen, of course, and he's a guy that could easily fill in and play a role. He's a consummate pro from the numbers we've seen, and obviously the work he's had over the last couple seasons. Played in some good South Carolina teams too. So there's opportunities for him if it ever comes to be. But yeah, he's definitely a fringe guy to make the American League team.
Yeah, for sure. Nick, what do you think about Redekop?
I think he's going to be a spicier version of Didier. I think.
So does that mean his shot's going to go 66 miles an hour from the right point, or?
I think he's just the way he sticks up for his team, like just having that and the leadership that Didier brought in. It's weird to me. I think he'll probably end up being in Toledo. And when we talked to Pat, like Pat wanted him. Like he was one of the guys that he wanted. So he's stoked for that pick. So I think that's probably where he's going to go. I'm hoping we don't see him up here just based off of injuries. But if he is, like, we know what to expect. He's going to be aggressive. He does put up a little bit of points, and he's kind of just a shit stirrer. Like, I think that's the best way to describe him. And I barely remember that game. Like when we went to Kalamazoo, he started out like a whole almost brawl between the fans and the players, and it got pretty nasty. So
He got suspended after that game.
yeah,
He did. But
So-
oh boy, yeah, he stirs the pot, man.
at least he's on our team now. So.
That's exactly my thoughts. Like I said, I won't heckle him until he's, if he's not on our team. So, yeah, it was just so interesting after watching him play with the K-Wings, like to see that signing come through. I think I texted Travis immediately and I'm like, what? Like Pat went and stole their division rivals captain. Cool. Well done. And he's done that a couple times now. So yeah, interesting to see what's going on with him. And like you said, Nick, hopefully we don't see him, but if we do, we know he's going to protect every young kid on this team.
Yeah.
Then move on to the last guy that was actually just recently signed, a signing that threw me for a loop because I really thought we were done. I didn't really know what to expect here.
Thought Sean Horkoff's like, hold my beer.
Right.
I don't know what he drinks, but
we got Carson Bantle. This is a left winger, 6'4", another big kid. He's 22 years old. Was originally drafted by the Arizona Coyotes. Ended up with obviously the Utah Hockey Club as they're coming up this year, but they did not re-sign him. And the Griffins took a flyer and signed this kid. So Tyler, what do we need to know about this guy?
Wisconsin Badgers legend. No, he wasn't. It was hard because the Wisconsin Badgers, for the most part, outside of the Gold Caulfield year of 21, which was a wonky year, all things considered, haven't been really all that good. Ludwig Pearson came in one year and had a really good season, but Carson's been kind of on a tough Wisconsin team over the last few years. They've had moments, and they've certainly been better than Ohio State recently. And I think, that program's getting back on the rise, but he's been kind of a victim of, not being necessarily a top 6 player. I know he's had those minutes before, but he just never really got the opportunity to be a consistent scorer. He was a pretty good, player and a good asset back in junior hockey. He even got to play for Team USA at the Helenka back in 2019. So he obviously has, kind of the ability to be a top end player and just another big guy if he can use his size. I mean, he's got good puck control. He has the size to use that to his advantage as well. I believe if he gets in the right spot and gets off to a good start, that's going to help his confidence a lot. He's one of those guys that was drafted by Arizona to the UH, of course, now to UHC, that just didn't sign. And I don't know if that is, unfortunately, I don't have the inside information on whether that's because the Utah Hockey Club didn't want to sign him, or maybe he didn't want to go to Arizona. And no offense, that situation down there, if I'm Carson Bantle, I don't think, he probably would have gone to Tucson in this case. And they still could, obviously, if you signed with UHC. But obviously, why would you want to go to a team that doesn't have an arena for itself? But, maybe he just thought, hey, I might get a better opportunity here with the Griffins, a better, obviously much, I can't say Tucson's a bad hockey team, but Grand Rapids obviously has a good team now. And they're really trying to become a consistent playoff contender as we knew them for many years. And you know what? A rising organization like the Red Wings, why would you not want to be associated with that?
And he's closer to home. He's from Wisconsin, so it makes sense across the board. Nick, what are your thoughts on this last minute ad for the Griffins here?
So this guy, from what I've seen with this guy, is that he is got some silky mitts. Does a lot of dekes, lots of crossovers. He is very confident puck handling, and so I'm excited to see like kind of what he does. Maybe he's a shootout specialist. I don't know. Like that's kind of where I could see him going. His birthday's actually a day after mine. We're a little bit years apart, but that's kind of cool. A little fact.
I was about to say, I'm like, Nick, you're not no-2 birth, so
no, not even close. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this guy. He's a fly. I mean, it's just taking a flyer on this guy. He's a 2-year contract. So I mean, assuming at one point we're gonna probably graduate some of our wingers up to the NHL, that this guy kind of can learn the system this year pretty fast, and then he'll be here next year too. So I didn't think we had enough depth. So I was glad to see this guy sign the day after we had talked about it off air. And it's still interesting. I mean, we could still sign other people, but it just coming down to dev camp now, it's like who's our surprise guys that are going to make this team, and maybe this guy ends up in Toledo at the end of it. Who knows? So
There's a possibility. I know they
It's
still
always
need to
fun.
sign a couple guys too, so who knows what that looks like. But that does wrap up all the offseason signings so far, I guess we should say then, for Grand Rapids. And I don't know. I want to pose the question before we move on to the departed players to each of you. Tyler, first, what would you grade the acquisitions that Steve Yzerman and Sean Horkoff made for the Grand Rapids Griffins this year, and giving them a letter grade?
You know, bringing in guys with experience like Snively, Campbell, like Dries, that's really good. And you know what? Campbell might not figure out his game. There's a great chance. But then again, there's a great chance that he becomes a 2.5 goals against average guy and a 915 save percentage. I can live with that. So I think a lot of people can as well. And the Red Wings certainly will be okay with that too. That shows that he's certainly bounced back after a really tough 23-24 season. So I'm going to go, I don't know, B plus, A minus around there. Like it's good. I mean, I'm not going to, it's hard to say. And this is why it's funny. I know a lot of people that do trade grades, signing grades, who did good and whatnot. And I do that myself with women's hockey and the PWHL. And it's so hard to say it, like, especially after drafts, which team did a good job drafting. How the hell are we supposed to know? How the heck am I supposed to tell you that, like, it's going to go well? Like, you're right. Snively could put up 60 points. Dries could put up 25 goals. Campbell could get 15 shutouts in a season. You're right. All of this could happen. But it's going to be, I'm just going to go B plus, play it safe, keep it calm.
I like that. Nick?
So you heard it here first from Tyler. 15 shutouts for Kasupi.
It's going to be a bunch of
Speaking it into existence, boys. Speaking it into existence.
I like what they did. They brought in leadership again, more captains from the outside. Now, does that create an issue later on of too many chefs in the kitchen kind of thing? Who knows? But I like the guys that they did bring in. Snively, Dries. I love those picks. And then they filled in for the future too, like with Singer and Rick Lofsky. I mean, you don't want to put too many people on the team, right? Because you want to be able to have room for prospects. You want to be able to have room for growth. And then you want to be able to be flexible for later on in case like injuries or anything like that. So I think they addressed the concerns for most of the concerns. My concerns still are on defense. I know there's a lot of veteran leadership and maybe they flow together and they have great chemistry together. Who knows? But like that's probably my biggest like fear this year going into this season is the defense on this team. But I mean chemistry and maybe our two-way forwards are gonna help make up for that. And our big goalies in the back are gonna cover our butts. It's most PG way I could say it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I'd give it a B plus as well this season. You know, you look at Sean Horkoff's first year in Grand Rapids, and he admitted itself. He did not set us up for success. It was bad. And you look at the next year, last year, you're like, all right, this is better. I like what we're doing here. And then there's another good off season of acquisitions for the organization, setting up this team for, like Tyler said, a team that'll consistently be in the playoffs. You know, looking at the division as a whole, we've said it a couple times now that I think this team easily could win the division this year if they play like they did last year, especially if they get off to a hotter start than they did last year. And we all assume that guys like Sebastian Cossa will.
One of the worst teams in the division and having a great second half rally. No,
I mean, it was fun in the second half, but
we got to be a fifth place team by Christmas, have some weird conversation behind the scenes between Watson and the guys, and all of a sudden we go on a 20 game here again. Just let it roll.
Yeah. I mean, Dan Watson and the coaches he's worked with are known for long winning streaks in the middle of seasons. So, or carrying them into the playoffs too. Pat Mickish, crazy guy. But at the same time, I think they're set up for success this season, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. And I do hope they get off to a better start, and I don't doubt that they will. So this is it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
So now Cookie's saying a 7-0 start for the Griffins. But don't forget, folks, in 04-05, the Griffins started out as a 5-0 team. And guess what happens? They missed the playoffs. The first team in AHL history to ever accomplish that.
Thanks for bringing me sadness. Anyways.
I'm just here to remind people that hot starts don't mean snot in October. This ain't football.
So I do want to say something before I forget, and this is important because this does differentiate between the NHL and the AHL and the ECHL, is that the big thing too is last year we had a lot of veterans on the team where somebody had to sit and it was a rolling sit. Somebody had to sit out. With this year, there's only 6 players that are veterans, which means that they played over 261 games in the NHL, AHL, or European Elite games, and they're at least 25 years old. So the only guys that we have are Didier, Dries, Gettinger, Lagesson, and Shine. Those are the only, and there's 5. So there's still room for one more person to come in before we have to start sitting
Really?
people.
Snively didn't play that? I thought Snively played more than that.
I thought Dello did too, but that's interesting.
So something to keep in mind. I know we had a couple questions last season of like, who are the veterans? What's the veteran rule? So I did want to put that out there because unless we sign somebody else, like this is the team we're running with. And that's the other aspect that I like about this. We're not having to sit somebody because of that rule.
Good catch, sir. Good catch. I like
look
that.
at Nick making the glove save there, just flashing it.
Ooh, perfect. All right, to wrap this one up, let's talk real quick through the guys that aren't going to be back this year. Radim Shimmick in his short stint with the Griffins, he's now over in Europe. Zach Aston Reese is in the Vegas organization. Wyatt Newpower, as we've talked to this offseason, is with the Bridgeport Islanders and the New York Islanders organization. Riley Sawchuk went overseas as well, left Toledo in the Griffins. John Letherman also going overseas. So Curtis Hall is he departed after his short stint. He's with the Cleveland organization. Austin Zarnik went overseas. Kind of sad to see him leave. And Jared McIsaac is in Czechia. So those are the guys that are for sure gone. There are some free agents still from the roster last season in the likes of Michael Hutchinson, Matt Luff, Tyler Spezia, Taro Hirose, and Joel Esperance. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. I don't foresee any signings in Grand Rapids. Maybe one potentially. Who knows? But it's that's who we lost. So with what we've gained and what we lost, yeah, we lost some firepower for sure. We lost some leaders, but we did also replace them with kind of similar players. So I don't think we're going to see too much of a drop. I know Nick's voiced his concerns before. Defensively, we look a little worse on paper, especially when you lose a guy like Simon Edmondson to Detroit and Albert Johansson to Detroit. But that's just a growing pain we're going to have to learn to live through. And some guys are going to be required to step up. And Dan Watson said it himself. Look for Antti Tuomisto and William Bolinder to make large strides this season. And who knows what that's going to look like. And shoot, even Dog, hinted at the fact that you'll see Bolinder running the power play every once in a while, most likely here. So it's going to be an interesting season defensively.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's a bummer too. Like C-Mac had some good minutes.
I liked him.
So he had something about his game, and unfortunately, you could see why it wasn't translating to the NHL level. But I mean, this is what happens, guys. Like this isn't the ECHL where you're going to have at least 10 or 12 guys back every single season. This is the American Hockey League where you should have your top prospects go up. And so you do have to worry about that changeover, and it stinks because you have to figure out 15 different names every single year. But that's just how it goes. And I personally, quick side thing: Zach Aston-Reese, losing him, that sucks. Just a fun guy to talk to. Seeing him out, like he plays so angry on the ice, and as soon as the buzzer sounds, you meet him in the locker room. The nicest SOB ever. Like he is just so fun to talk to. You couldn't tell that he just went through a tough hockey game. Like he is a guy that you could just meet at a bar and have a beer with and enjoy it. Like just wish him all the best of luck. Cause I knew him because I watched him with the Leafs, and I knew him when he was with Pittsburgh. He's that kind of the grinder guy. And I'm like, oh, must be a real tough as nails kind of. No, just the sweetest person ever.
I'm going to miss his goal song.
We'll miss him. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, someone's got to pick that up, dude.
I wonder if they'll do that again this year. The individual goal songs. They'll be interesting.
I think they are.
I like them, but I also like, a whole goal song that's standard that an arena can get behind and chant with and have fun with. I do like that, but the personalized ones were fun, especially his. I will miss him. It does suck. I won't miss some of the dumb decisions he made on the ice with penalties, but we won't go back into those. We laid enough into him on those in the regular season episodes last season. But with that, boys, I don't think I have anything else for this episode. So I think it's time to wrap it up here, unless you guys want to add anything.
I'm apparently ready for hockey season, even though Michigan plays this Saturday. So yeah, feels like hockey season never ended.
Hockey season really never did end. It's been a wild off season. But it's good to start getting back into the stride of regular things. We're still going to be bringing you guys some interviews and stuff like that as we lead up to the season. That's how we're able to go back to 2 episodes a week this early. We're excited to do it this early. It is we're just ready to get rolling. Like, we're so excited for the season. The more things, like Nick and I both said, after we bought the tickets for training camp for the red and white game in Traverse City, we were just like, all right, it's time. We're ready for hockey season. It's here. So we're ready to roll. But with that, we'll wrap this episode up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And of course, as always, thank you to our sponsors. Shout out to Everything Hockey. Make sure you go to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST to save a few bucks off your order. And of course, the sponsors from the network, DraftKings and BetterHelp, and the network itself, the Hockey Podcast Network. Fantastic partners as always. With that, everyone, that is where we'll wrap this up. Thank you. Have a great week. Go Griffins. Go Walleye.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at BrandonGR Hockey.